Good morning, everyone. This is Michele Hughes from Ageless and Timeless. This morning, I have a really beautiful guest that I've been wanting to have on my show for quite a while, and just the timing and all our various busy schedules and logistics, we couldn't make it happen right away. But her name is Lydia Graham, and she lives actually here in Tiburon as well as in down in Carmel. So we get to see each other and talk to each other. And she, like me, is just a passionate advocate for health and health and fitness and beauty and all the things that we talk about on Ageless and Timeless. So Lydia, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Michele. It's so wonderful what you're doing with your podcast, and I love your episodes. I'm learning so much, even after all the study that I have done. So thank you.
Well, that's a pretty astounding compliment, because you have spent all your life and, very much influenced by your mother, I guess you told me, and just lucky that you were introduced to this way of living and discipline so early in your life. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What were those early influences, and how did you get on the path in this journey to better living and better and also healthier living, of course?
Thank you. Yes, well, I was very lucky. I mean, first of all, because I grew up in the South, and Southern food is not exactly that healthy, right? So, but my mother was not a Southern cook. She was, in fact, she outlawed charcoal broiled meats. There was no trans fats. It was like there were no hamburgers and hot dogs in our family. So, in fact, my father used to have to sneak out and sneak potato chips. So it was.
How did she get influenced where she could be so knowledgeable, and particularly back then?
I honestly don't know. She was a professor, so she loved to learn, and she was always just very keyed in. She had great instincts. So I was very lucky, that I wasn't raised on junk food. I was very, I always ate healthfully, and then in college, even in college where everybody's eating junk food, I was like, we have to get healthier food on campus. And so I actually started a little company to provide healthy food on campus. So that was my first business venture. Yeah.
Yeah. Where did you go to school? I forgot.
I went to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, undergrad.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You did tell me that. So right, because North Carolina is not known for, what is it, chitlins and all that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, North Carolina has some pretty sophisticated areas.
I know that now they do, but when we were growing up, I guess we weren't quite as knowledgeable about food.
They do like their fried food, I would say,
Yeah. No, because my sister in the summertime she has a place in North Carolina, in Linville, North Carolina. Yeah, up in the Blue Ridge. So I've gone to Asheville and Charlotte, and then we go just traveling around Boone and those areas. And, the food is mostly, even in this day, we try to always go to the healthy ones, but there's still a lot of Southern influence, like fried chicken.
Sure.
Who doesn't love fried chicken? But, you learn not to do that. So we'll start with nutrition. So let's go over some of the basics that you believe are essential to good healthy eating. So let's start at like the ABCs of healthy eating.
Sure. Well, it's a very personal thing, obviously. I mean, our bodies are all different, and there's a million diets out there. But just like to sort of level the playing field of things that really are right for everyone, I would say, first of all, sugar is not a good thing. It's a very hidden ingredient in so many foods, and we need to get smarter about how to read labels, because the food companies really hide sugar. It's known by so many different names, and there's just and so that's something I would really encourage everyone to do their research on. You can even just Google it, different names for sugar, and you can identify these so that when you go to the store, you can read the labels. That's really the key. I think we need to be informed shoppers, and we need to go to the store and read the labels, what we're buying. You just have to read them the first time, because a lot of us, we buy repetitive products, which is another thing. We should vary our diet, obviously, but once you know a product is okay, then you can buy it the next time, right? So sugar is, a lot of different experts, will vary their opinions on different topics, but sugar is really one thing that everybody agrees on. It's not good for us. It has so many deleterious effects in our body that it raises our blood sugar, it causes insulin resistance, it feeds cancer cells, which is really scary, and it contributes to premature aging. So I know you've had some other guests on your show, Michele, that talk about really aging from the inside out, right, and the outside in, right? But inside out, sugar, if we cut out sugar, that's huge, right? But you have to do it slowly. I think for myself, I hardly ever eat sugar, but when I do, I use it as a treat. Like I love dark chocolate.
Me too. Me too.
So that's like my sugar treat. But I try to avoid it as much as possible and use it as like just a special food. But if you're used to a lot of sugar, it's not easy to give up. I mean, some people go through a little bit of withdrawal, so I would wean off it slowly. Don't go cold turkey. But actually, sugar is very addictive, which is why it is in so many foods. And it's been likened to actually in lab rats, the rats will actually, it's more addictive than even cocaine. I mean, they will continually hit the lever for the sugar. Yeah. So I think that we really have to be careful with that. Secondly, I think fried foods, that's another one. Just like try to stay clear of those. It's really better to saute your foods. It's better to steam your foods. A lot of people are into raw foods. You can mix it up, and have a variety of that. But I would say if you're out in a restaurant, try to get the foods that aren't fried. That's a really big one, because that is just, there's all kinds of chemical changes that happen when foods are deep fried, and it's just not good for us. And it can raise all kinds of issues like atherosclerosis and our cholesterol, our bad cholesterol, and those sorts of things. So I would say that is important.
European Wellness, founded by the iconic and widely published Professor Dr. Michael Chan, is the world leader in stem cell and peptide therapy, with 26 medical and aesthetic spa locations primarily in Europe and Asia. Their website, www.europeanwellness.com, details the wide range of wellness products that can be ordered using the Ageless code for a 10% discount. They will also offer our viewers discounts on medical and cosmetic services and products if they choose to visit the clinics. I have firsthand experience using their wide range of science-based stem cell and peptide products and am now a loyal customer. Go to their website, www.europeanwellness.com, for more information about this exciting company.
Also, variety is really important. I know I'm guilty of this. I tend to go shopping and buy the same foods and eat the same foods, but it's very important to try to vary our diet, and that way we get different nutrients. But I would say that also food allergies are really important. So that's something that I would encourage your listeners to really test for, and you can do that. You don't have to go to a doctor's office to necessarily test for that. You can also do what they call elimination diets. So if you're feeling tired all the time or things like that, it might be interesting. In fact, this is how I'm gluten-free myself, and this is how I found out that I had an allergy to gluten, is that, I just started giving up gluten, and I felt so much better, and my immune system was so much better. I used to get on an airplane and I'd catch every cold that was like anyone had. And I have to say, in the last probably 10 years, I've had one or two flus. since I gave up gluten. So,
And you were probably on an airplane right before that. That's usually how people like us get sick. Is we're around other people. It's not because we're not doing the right things. It's because we're exposed. And I know the only cold I've had in 10 years has been when I sat next to someone on an airplane in first class. Which really,
oh my goodness, yeah,
really the frustrating part of it. But they were sneezing and coughing, and 5 days after I got to Miami, I had the worst cold I'd had in, like I say, I hadn't been sick in. So I totally agree with what you're saying on that. So let's just go back to sugar for a moment. What are the names of the other chemicals that are actually synonyms for sugar? What are the things like sorbitol and fructose?
Fructose, big one. High fructose corn syrup is a big one. Dextrose. There's so many. Like I said, Michele, oh my gosh, there's like so many that I would just encourage every single person that's listening to this podcast to just Google it and keep that list handy when you go shopping, and I would just encourage, I'm not wild about the artificial sweeteners. They have their own issues, and some people have digestive problems with them. So I think if you can just, maybe if you really need something sweet, just have a little tiny bit of honey, or sometimes I sweeten my tea or something with a teaspoon of glycine. So that's another option.
Manuka honey is actually supposed to have medicinal qualities. So, but not obviously not in excess. But if you use a little, like a half a teaspoon of Manuka honey, you're getting the digestive benefits and the skin benefits. But you have to buy the right Manuka, because it does. They're just like olive oil. It's like you have to be such a smart shopper to know what to buy. But the Manuka honey, the best ones are from New Zealand, and the best ones are the higher. If you look at the higher number on the bottle, that's the better brand. And then you want them to be like honey, raw and unpasteurized. Right. If
exactly. Honey is kind of an interesting subject, because it is in its pure form, like you said, and particularly the Manuka, it can be healthy. It's still sugar, though. It's still sugar.
It is.
Don't go overboard. But the issue, of course, with the bees these days and with the pesticides, it's a bit tricky. So I think you noted quite well. You have to know your sources, and that's true with everything, with our food. I would also say stay away from GMOs. I mean, I loved your interview with Dr. Nana. That was so fabulous. And I know she did this research on, is an apple when it's radiated? And I love that. It was just really interesting. So I think GMO is something we want to avoid. So that's another one.
You raise a very important point here that makes me wonder, because in your articles it says, well, the EU and other countries forbid GMOs, as an example, or there was one, I don't know, there was another one that you were referring to that they don't allow, but our country still allows. Why is it that our beautiful America, the most advanced country in the world, is so far behind in those kinds of changes that need to be done? I mean, I know, follow the money is one answer, but what do you think?
That's a big subject. I know that it's interesting. Mark Hyman actually has a fascinating book out called Food Fix. And that gets into the entire food ecosystem. So for people that are interested in that subject, that might be a good resource, for them to look at. Yeah, it's a subject. Well, it's a subject he wrote an entire book about. So back to your comment, Michele, I think you're right on the money in terms of, the onus is really on each one of us to take care of ourselves and to find the resources, that we need to do that. And so So, and that can take a team, and it can take some research, and even aside from a team, if money's tight or whatever for folks, there's so much you can learn on your own, really. But I would also say that nutrition can be very personal. So that foods that might be good for me might not be good for you. And also diets, one of the things that I've found in my life that has really served me well, is the fact that I've always been sort of on the moderate path, right? And I don't go overboard on the extremes. I've never done extreme sports. I stopped running. Actually, I used to be a huge runner, long distance runner. I stopped that in my 30s because I just felt like it was too much pounding on my joints, because I was seeing all these older runners with knee issues and hip issues, and so I still exercise like crazy, but I don't do the extreme sports. And same thing with diet. I found that for myself, it works better if I stay I do more like a Mediterranean diet, and I do, I do my own personal version of that. That works best for my body. I'm a high metabolizer, so it's something that, like a total keto diet does not work for me. I would lose weight like crazy, which I don't need to do. So, but for other people, who might need a jump start, in like losing weight or things like that. So that's where it gets so personal. And like there's even tests out there that you can do. You don't need a doctor to do them. Like Biome is a great one for digestion. And you can they will give you, if you do the Biome test, you can do it at home, mail it in. They will actually give you a whole spreadsheet of foods that are good for you and foods that aren't, for your digestion and how to heal your microbiome, your gut biome.
How do you do that? Do you just fill out an application, or do you have to do blood work?
It's just a little poop test, basically, and you just mail it in, and they give you, an entire. Now, the only thing I will say about that is it changes over time. So what you get today may not be good tomorrow, right? So you have to, if you're going to do that, I would suggest testing every 6 to 8 months, 8 months, maybe every year, because it's a snapshot in time. But it's good for, enough time to heal your gut, right? So that just is where, and some of the foods may surprise you. They give you superfoods, and then they give you foods that are sort of minimize these foods and avoid these foods. So yeah.
When I was reading your article, though, you had so much depth on the nutrition side, because even though I realize, and you are correct, that it is personal, that there are some broad brushes that we should all know about. One, let's talk about grass-fed, because that's a big confusion, I think, in a lot of people's shopping habits, is what really should I buy? Like, I still want to eat some meat. I want the protein, or at least if I don't eat meat, I want to eat, red meat. I want to eat chicken or turkey or fish or whatever. So we have all these, conditions that apply for each of those categories of poultry, of fish, and of meat. So we can take the three.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
when you're in the store, just tell us, when you're in Whole Foods, wherever you go, what do you ask for?
Well, the first thing, fish, you have to be very careful about mercury. That's, it's some people, they can be as healthy as can be, but maybe their bodies just love to suck up, metals, right? So I think for people, it's good to have your metals tested. That's a great thing to do. If you are, if you're heavy in metals, then that's where you should see your practitioner to try to figure out a way to detox those. But fish is something that we have to be very careful with. So there's the large fish can be very heavy in mercury, like tuna, that kind of thing. So I would not. There's a lot. Like I have a couple friends that are pescatarians, and you have to be very careful that you don't OD on fish, right? So that's you don't want to be eating it every meal,
Yeah,
because that is a good way to accumulate a lot of, and plus our oceans are not exactly pure these days.
exactly.
So that's what I would say about fish. I did find a tuna actually that I love. It's called Safe Catch, and they sell it. I don't know if they sell it in Whole Foods, but it is, every single fish is tested for mercury, which is great.
Mm.
So
Oh my
that's,
God. So how do you
yeah.
find it? Where did you?
Um, I think I bought it at it might be at Whole Foods. You can check, but I also found it at a grocery store in the Bay Area that I shop at called Good Earth. So I know they sell
I
it.
love Good Earth. Yeah,
Um, yeah, and so that's, that's because I still love a tuna. I love a tuna salad. So
me
that was a real find. I love that. So so that's what I would say. And I loved, actually, there was a back to Dr. Nana again. I know she said eat tuna with cilantro, which I thought was a great tip.
too.
That's something I'm going to start doing. But
Right.
also, yeah,
Cilantro is a detoxifier of mercury, so a lot
great
of people don't
detoxifier.
know that. But eating cilantro can help your heavy metal
Exactly.
load. So yeah, definitely eat fresh cilantro whenever
Yeah.
you can.
Exactly. So that's a really good tip. Then
Mhm.
also, I would say for chicken, okay, chicken, you have to be very careful with chicken. It, I only eat organic chicken. I mean, I just, the industrial farming
Right.
with the meat, even when I eat out, if I can't verify that it's organic or it's grass fed, grass finished, I
Right.
just I eat vegetarian when I go out. So
Right.
uh, and so I think with chicken, you just have to be very careful that it is organic. And then also with beef, the interesting thing about beef is that you can have grass fed and grass finished, right? It should be grass fed, grass finished, because what happens is feed um, they can feed the grain, at the end, right? So instead of being like grass, it needs to be grass finished.
Right.
So that's, and
Yeah,
organic, right?
but
So
you said that in your article, and that was news
mhm,
to me. I never had asked,
yeah,
in a restaurant if I'm going to have beef. I always just say, is it grass fed? But
yeah,
now I have to say, is it grass fed and grass finished? Well, probably the waiter or waitress isn't going to know that.
yeah,
Nor maybe even the chef, who
yeah,
knows?
yeah,
That's why you're right. It's probably better to only control what you eat by buying it yourself, and
yeah.
then in the restaurant eat the safe things that are hopefully organic vegetables and salads.
Mm.
And
Oh, and I'm glad you brought that up, Michelle, because here's another tip that's really good. Environmental Working Group every year puts out their 15 foods that are most contaminated. And
mm,
so that's a great little list to reference, because
yeah,
when you eat out, you
yeah.
can actually avoid those foods if you're not sure that they're organic. So,
Like
yeah.
it's like strawberries. I love strawberries, but I
Mhm.
every list that you ever see online, like that working, what's it called, working
Envi- Environmental Working Group. Yeah.
environmental working
Yeah.
group. That
Yeah.
list, I go to that or the other lists that are
Hmm.
online, and
Hmm.
strawberries are like at the top of the
I
list.
know.
That's because
Hmm.
they're so porous, and even if they're
Hmm.
organic, you don't know if the farm next door is not organic and is spraying, and the wind is blowing onto the organic farm that has gone through all the headaches of getting certified, but still can't control what the nature does. So, with what I tell everybody, all my friends, if you're buying strawberries, soak them in a solution. You can use baking soda. You can use the spray that Trader Joe's sells is good. Grapefruit seed oil is they sell it in Good Earth, and you or in
Hmm.
Whole Foods. You buy a little bottle and then you just put a few drops. But
Hmm.
you cannot just wash a strawberry and think you've gotten rid of the
Yeah.
bad the residue.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I would also say back to, what applies to everyone, in terms of food and shopping, is really to avoid the seed oils. That's another one that's really, it's almost like sugar. So
Yeah,
it's anything that's like sunflower oil,
yeah,
safflower oil, all of those seed oils. are
Right.
really inflammatory. They're very high in omega-3s and omega-6s. I mean, sorry, not omega-3s,
Yeah.
omega-6 and 9. And
Yeah.
so we
You don't
want
want
the
a lot
threes.
of you want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we want balance. We want a balance, but we do not want an overdose of the inflammatory omegas. So,
I'm glad you brought up the oils because you
mhm,
had said in one of your articles you were listing the oils to use for cooking, and with a whether it's a high flash point. So I want people to know that what those oils are, and let's go over that. So I know that the best one of the best is coconut oil, but most people
mhm,
don't even think they should eat coconut oil because it's been such a bad rap, just like with eggs. That they
mhm,
coconut oil is going to be too high cholesterol. But so coconut oil and avocado oil can take the flash. Grapeseed oil can take the flash, although that is a seed,
mhm.
grapeseed oil, but it does seem to be one of the ones that gets through the barrier of being damaging. And then ghee, you mentioned ghee, which is butter, a form of
Mhm,
butter.
mhm.
And you then said olive oil, but then you qualified it and said that if you're going to use olive oil, make sure you cook on a very low heat. And
Mhm.
a lot of the people that have been on my podcast and that I've read, other articles have said never use olive oil to cook with. Only use it on your salads or on other
Yeah,
food that's not cooked.
that's
You
really the
cook it
best way to
over the
use it.
vegetables.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a good finishing oil, like I put
there
it
you
on
go.
after I cook
That's it.
and then and also I'm very big on California olive oil.
Sure.
There's a lot of contamination ironically with the Italian olive oils. I mean, it sounds good, right?
Yeah,
We all have this vision of Tuscany and
right.
Tuscany under the sun, but actually there's more control, I think, with the domestic olive oils. So if they're organic,
Yeah,
um,
I always try to buy California,
yeah.
organic California olive
Mhm.
oil, but first cold press.
Mhm.
And people don't often know what that means, but that means that that was the first olives that went through
Mhm.
the process, and that
Mhm.
means you're getting the best, not the one that's
Mhm.
like five times later. And you
Mhm.
want it to, if you can, you want it to be raw, right? Organic raw. Well,
Mhm.
olives, you don't.
Organic, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, organic.
Organic, yeah. You're so well informed, Michelle.
Well, I think you and I, like I said, I think we're soul sisters. We've got so similar, not only our past and bringing us here, but what we believe and how we practice in the present. And when you find someone that's a kindred spirit like that, you want to hang out with them because you know that you two are going to have so much to talk about. And
Because we
if you
can't.
go ahead,
Because
go ahead.
well, I was just going to say because that way we can get the whole picture, right? There's so
Well,
much
we learn
information
we
in
learn from each other too. So if you have a chance, listen to Sandy Gooch, who's one of my very closest friends. She's the founder of Mrs. Gooch's, the health food store. You probably don't know it, but
it.
it
I've
was the
heard of it. Yeah.
yeah, it was the biggest. It was the first. She was the
Mhm.
first woman in the grocery business, and then she was also the first to start a health food
That's great.
supermarket, and she got acquired by Whole Foods many years ago. But she learned because she was ill and
Mm.
she was facing not having answers, and
Mhm.
she was driving
Mhm.
up and down the coast of California just to find a few things that would help her illness.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that she found her way. That's great.
Yeah, well, she
Yeah.
more than found her way because Whole Foods acquired her, and now
Exactly. Right.
living happily ever after with lots of
That's.
other activities. But she still misses that, and she still
Mm.
follows, of course, and goes to a lot of these conferences. So she's a great one. We go hiking, and we're always
Mm.
talking about the
That's wonderful.
things. So okay, so let's go to sleep. No,
Sure.
let's not you and me go to sleep. Let's go to the subject of sleep.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so tell us more about what happened at that conference.
Well, let me just preface it with I am a great sleeper. So it was kind of ironic for me to wind up doing this because the way I got into following sleep, of course, that I mean everybody says sleep is important and you've got to have it, and it's absolutely true, right? It is like it's the foundation of where we restore and all
Right.
of that. But at the same time, I never really thought too much about it because I'm such a great sleeper. So,
Right.
but my husband, on the other hand, is a terrible sleeper.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went through all of these different sleep clinics, sleep doctors, all this stuff. He was still struggling. And then he met, well, actually, at my conference, I wound up having Dr. Bruce, and he is actually the only person that was able to help my husband. So,
Wow.
and he has an incredible book out, which I would encourage everyone to read, called "The Power of When,"
Mm-hmm.
and it's just chock full of information. And I learned so much from him about um, sleep. We're not all equal, in terms of our sleep habits and how we sleep and when we sleep and when our energy peaks, our circadian rhythms are all different. And he really gets into that. Like he says we have 4 chronotypes. We have, there's the bears, which is like everybody society is sort of built on the bears. It's the people that go to sleep at 11 o'clock at night and get up, and at 7, go to work at 9, work till 5, that sort of thing. And they're really lucky in a lot of ways because society is sort of built around them. But then there's a couple others that are not quite so fortunate in that respect, and that is the dolphins, who are just really pretty much insomniacs because they have dolphins. I don't know if you know this, but they have one eye that always is open and the other eye is closed, and sort of they alternate back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the lions. The lions like wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're the ones that are the early birds, and you get to work and they've already sent you 20 emails in your inbox. And then but the downside of being a lion is that I remember he told this story about this client that he had who was on a date, and he really wanted to take this girl out, and he finally got to the date, and then he fell asleep at dinner, and she's
Oh,
like, well, she's
oh,
like, well, and then when he asked her again, she's like, well, I guess you're not that interested in me because you fell asleep at dinner, right?
oh,
So
God.
it's like, yeah, so lions, they're great in the work environment because they're up before everybody else, and they've got the key, and everybody aspires to be a lion. But the downside is they kind of fall asleep, early in the evening and when everybody's socializing. So that's a little bit of a problem. And then
Right.
there's the wolves, which I've had I have some folks in my family that are wolves. Like, they actually come alive at like 11 o'clock at night, and then they like get most of their work done from, like say they'll go into the mid morning, like 2 or 3 in the morning, and that's their natural rhythm. So
Mm-hmm.
the key is, I think, on sleep is to determine what is your sleep type, right? What's your chronotype? And then how can you maximize that? And you can maximize your energy by working with your chronotype, which is very interesting. So instead of fighting it, like if you're a wolf, don't try to be a bear. It's like get into a job that you can maybe, like, tech is full of, the technology world is full of wolves, right? That are like, come alive. They love to work into the wee hours and things like that. So it's how do you fit your lifestyle into that, and then
Well, can I
how
ask you a question, not to interrupt you,
sure,
but just to go a little deeper?
yeah,
What causes the different chronotypes?
yeah, good question. It's actually genetic.
Yeah.
It can actually change a little bit over one's life. For example, teenagers kind of become wolves, in their teen years, if you've ever had teenagers in your household.
Mm-hmm.
And as people become older, a lot of times, we sleep less and we wake up earlier, so it can change, but our chronotype is basically our chronotype. So
Mm-hmm.
it's your personal rhythm. And so one of the keys is to work with your rhythm, instead of fighting it, because it takes so much energy to fight your rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's one thing that was just really fun, to
Mm-hmm.
learn. And it's a great party. It's a great party discussion. Like,
Yeah, it's a great, like a social,
it,
interaction discussion.
ex-
Like like
What's your
asking
chronotype?
yeah, asking what your astrological sign is. Now we can
Ex-
ask what your chronotype is. So let's
ex-
just say you are a wolf, uh,
mm,
but you want to go to sleep and be because they say the healthiest
mhm.
time for
Sure.
rejuvenation is around 11 to 1. So if you go to bed
Mhm.
at 10 or 10:30 or so, you're hopefully getting to REM sleep by 11, and then you should have at least 8 hours sleep, and if 8 to 9 hours, even better.
Mhm.
So let's say you get up at 7, 11
Mhm.
to 7, or
Mhm.
10 to 6 or something. But what those are supposedly, allegedly, science that I've read articles about have said that's the healthiest sleep cycle. But you're not that chronotype that allows you
Yeah,
that.
so
That means
again,
you're not as healthy because you're up at 1 and 2 and that's still working in the morning when you should be rejuvenating.
well, with your chronotype, let's say if you were a wolf, I mean, you have your own cycles, right? So your cycle, you would go through the same cycle, but you would just go through it at a different time than like a bear, right? For example. But there are certain things that apply to everyone. I mean, I think for example, it's very important to go to sleep at the same time every night, regardless of what chronotype you are. So to try to get our bodies really like routine when it comes to sleep. So
Uh,
if we, let's say you're a bear and you go to sleep every night at 10:30 and you get
mhm,
up every morning at 7, and that gives you sort of that rhythm, for your body type, right? And so that's really critical no matter what chronotype you are, to go to bed and to get up at the same time. So, and that's true even on the weekends, So it's just when you get up at a different time or you oversleep, then that is going to sort of not really help you with your energy level. The other thing is that and whenever you wake up, it's really important to go out into the light and get some light,
mhm,
because that will set your, set your rhythm. That sunlight, our eyes receive that light, and that
right,
really works on our brains, which works on our nervous system. The whole thing's connected. So
right.
so that really is good. Now, I'm lucky because I have dog duty in the morning, so I have to get up. Like the minute I get up, I have to take my dog out,
Mhm.
and that's and I don't wear sunglasses, so it doesn't. Don't wear sunglasses when you go out.
Yeah.
Another thing that's really important is not to, before we go to bed, it's really important to be off your devices for 2 or 3 hours, which is really
Yeah.
difficult for some people. I know for me, at one point, I was working with Asia a lot, some folks in Asia, and that was really difficult because of the time zone, and I'd wind up like on the computer till like 11. So in those cases, I would wear some blue light blocking glasses, that would help that. And same thing if you're watching TV or things like that. It really helps a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and even grounding, they say, they can buy these grounding beds or grounding
Mhm.
bags, and
Mhm.
how that helps you to get,
Mhm.
a better night's sleep because
Mhm.
you're getting closer to the Earth's, whatever the tempo is that
Yeah, I don't do that, but I've heard that that is interesting. The other thing I learned from Dr. Bruce, actually, which I think we all have our, weaknesses, and I think one of mine is hydration. So I have to continually force myself to like drink liquids and water. But I learned from him that it's very important to always be hydrated.
yeah.
So in the morning as we sleep, we become dehydrated, and that is something that when we wake up, we should have at least 50. The first thing you should do on your bedside table is have 15 ounces of water or
Mhm.
16 ounces of water on your nightstand, and then just drink that immediately when you get up, to really replenish that.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that yeah, Lydia, I think that's the reason they say lemon water. Have a cup of nice filtered water with some
Mhm.
fresh lemon squeezed into it, because
Mhm.
lemon helps to not alkalize you,
Mhm.
as we are tending to be more acidic, and
Yeah.
particularly most people are for some reason. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we eat alkaline diets,
Mm-hmm.
it's also because we tend to get dehydrated, and particularly if you work out, that's the whole other thing is, should you
Sure.
take electrolytes? Should you take, well, I just use lemon water. I don't bother with the electrolytes. We have 10 minutes left, so let me ask you some open-ended questions to get off the topical subject. So what for you, this is now going to you and your personal life and journey. What have you
Mm-hmm.
found to be the most helpful um, idea or company or just what has helped you the most in your health journey?
Wow, that's a big question. I would say I don't really look at it that way. I really look at just every day, a day, it's like a daily thing for me.
Mhm.
And every choice, it's really interesting. It's like every time I go out to eat, or every day that I get up and, make a decision, what kind of exercise am I going to do? So I really take it like day by day, and I don't really look back, you know. I think I would say this is very interesting about aging too. I think it's very important to engage in lifelong learning. I think that's very key. And
Mhm.
and one of the things I've noticed about the people that age well versus the people that don't is that they really remain engaged, and they stay curious, and they stay active with their minds and their bodies, and we do get to a point in older adulthood where we can't, maybe engage so much with our bodies, but they're still engaged with their mind. I remember I met someone um, who was 97 years old, and he had been in the film industry, and he was already talking about the next book and the next film he was going to produce. And I was like, wow, you know, that's really great. And so I I think that, but I will also go back to the fact that in aging, um, our bodies are, uh, our physicality is the baseline, So the more that we can take care of that and be in a body, it's a lot more fun to be in a body that works, right, than one that doesn't. So the more that we can take care of our physical bodies, the more energy we have to develop our other areas of our life, like our learning, our community, our spiritual pursuits, whatever those are for people. But I heard an interesting thing the other day that the word health actually derives from an old English word, which means that which is whole unto itself. And
Oh,
so it's really, important. I think we have to approach aging and wellness and well-being is really looking at it from the whole. What are the pieces that we are strong in? What are the pieces we need to sort of bolster up? It's like maybe we don't pay attention to our home environment, which has maybe many toxins, maybe we're using the wrong cleaning products or things like that, or, do we have healthy air in our homes? Those things like that. Or are we exercising enough? Things like that. So we can't, but balance is really, I think balance is the key, and making time and being really conscious of the decisions we make in every moment. So I would say that's what's really helped
I
me.
think that's actually beautifully said because it really does bring it to less of a scientific, analytical endeavor and more to a qualitative, because it is all about choice. What you just described it's choice every single moment of every single day. We don't even
Mhm.
realize the
Mhm.
choices that we are making. So,
And they
I,
add up. See, that's the thing that people don't
well,
realize.
absolutely, the sum total of all of our
Mhm.
choices
Yeah.
that we've made. And we haven't, and don't forget love, because we
Mhm.
were getting into the spiritual realm or the
Mhm.
emotional realm, but, body, mind, and spirit. And so, I would say, having lived a longer life now than I did when I was 20. I would say that I've learned something very important, which is that as you get a little older, your day gets consumed with more of those choices because you are more aware. Then, in your 20s, you just kind of take it all for granted. But as you get a little older, you say, "Oh, I got this little wrinkle under my eye. I didn't have that yesterday or last year or whatever. And now what am I going to do about it?" Now you start reading all the articles about wrinkles, right? So now you're
Mhm.
taking more time to investigate. And then you have the internet, you add
Mhm.
all the information, and some of it, which is,
Mhm.
on the internet, which is not to be believed, or you have to be cautious. But the internet does bring to us, as information is power, the internet brings to us so much knowledge, potential, if we know how to use it
Mhm.
properly.
And I
So,
would say, that it's wonderful to have access, all that access, but I
mhm,
think we also have to remember, I think we're so consumed these days with so much information coming at us that we
mhm.
have to turn that off at some point,
Distract-
and just breathe, just
yeah,
be.
yeah.
And it's interesting because I know I did this a little bit during the pandemic, where you just sign up for this course and that course and this thing, and it's good to like slow that all down and maybe just pursue one thing at a time and get good at that, and just, but I will say one of the great things, and I will probably one of the single biggest things people can do to maintain their age or reverse age is exercise, and
Yeah,
movement. So
right.
because we are in such a sedentary world these days, and so one of the new things that I learned over the pandemic was mobility training, which is really interesting. And I know a lot of athletes, have been doing that for years, but I
Mhm.
had never really done it, and it's fabulous. So I would encourage people to look into
And
that.
how do you define when you say mobility training? What do you mean by that?
It's really about, getting all the parts of your body sort of back to their natural state, where you have total flexibility and movement, and it's done. You need a trainer, or you can probably access some things on the internet, in mobility training. It's a lot of stretching, like holding stretches for a couple minutes. I would say 2 to 3 minutes at a time, and working different muscle groups in sequence. So
Mhm.
it's, a lot of people think mobility, they think of, a long-term care facility and people wiggling their ankles or something. That's not mobility training. So
Right.
but when you see athletes, like if you're watching a football game and you see how these guys just bounce off the field, that's kind of what you want. You want that sort of flexibility. So we tend to get less flexible as we get older.
My gym here in my house, I have that. I don't know if you've heard of the power plate, but it's a vibrational machine. It was developed in Germany. You know, typically, very German in terms of the high tech and very, very, very precise. And
Mhm.
it's basically a machine that you get on and you do all kinds of exercises. But because you're getting a vibration while you're on there, you're accelerating the effects at the core, at the ATP of your cells. And so your muscles are going to get a workout that you don't even have to work as hard to do, but all you do is your basic workout,
Mhm.
sit-ups or push-ups or whatever, leg lifts, squats, but you're doing it on vibration. So that's another thing that I would suggest people might want to look into. The one I bought was the original. It's a big clunker of a machine. It's like $20,000, but they now make them that the same, maybe not as high tech, but the same kind of outcome with a much less expensive price tag. So anyway, that's another little tip. Well, before we have to say
Mm.
goodbye, which I knew would go by so fast, so,
Yeah.
Lydia, I could talk
Mhm.
to you for days,
And
weeks,
likewise, yeah.
years. But so, what one thing would you like to share
Mhm.
with our
Mhm.
audience, just as a summary of what we've who you are, what you stand for. How would you summarize that?
Well, I would say every step matters.
Mm-hmm.
And think about that as you go through your day. Make choices that are either life affirming. You can ask yourself, is this life affirming or is this life negating, right? And
I
that
love
can be the sandwich you eat. It can be the exercise you do. It can be the interaction, with a coworker or a partner. So, and I would say also minimize your stress. It's that's really important. But I think look at your life as a whole. And what are the areas that you want to make improvements or change that will be life affirming for you.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. That is beautiful. And I know you wanted to, probably didn't think, but to say sleep in there, sleep, diet. I mean, all those things we've talked about today, they all go
Yeah.
into that macro picture.
Yeah. It's a basket.
And the Ageless and Timeless, our mission is through the knowledge we gain through people like you, to get a base of what we can actually then take into action. So it's a base. Knowledge is power, like we said, and then from that power, that powerful place, we then can make changes, because change is really one of the hardest things that people can do as they get older. So, Lydia, thank you so much for all your insights and knowledge. And what I love so much about you too is that, and like me, neither one of us are doctors, but we've practiced in a very, very life experiential way. And so we can share with people, not as some medical doctor, but as a human being, and that has had both the goods and the bads, because we all go down dead end paths, and so
That's life.
we learn from our experiences. So, well, thank you very much for being with us today, and I wish you all the luck on your journey. And I think Tony may be flashing your new website on our when we do our live podcast on the distribution. Is that all right with you?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Tony.
Okay, very good. All right, well, I'll bid you goodbye and have a beautiful weekend. And
thank you, Michelle.
Okay, take care. All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.